Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. We're just gonna get into another day of you do good, you feel good, and just hang with me while I talk about the last 48 hours. So if you're new to this channel, my name's Nikki. I have a 2-year-old daughter and a 9-month-old daughter. So my 9-month-old daughter was diagnosed with what is called micronathia, in which case she was born with a small jaw, or the her jaw was so small and the airway in her back of her throat was so small that when she was born, she had to have a breathing tube put in the back of her throat, so that if her tongue fell over her airway, she would not suffocate herself. And then she had to have her jaw lengthened, and she spent 3.5 months in the NICU, which she's doing great now. She's still getting fed by feeding tube, but we are starting to see improvement in terms of her feeding, taking like spoonfuls of applesauce and purees and stuff like that. So another thing that my daughter was diagnosed with in utero was a cleft palate. And so the back of her throat part of the back of her throat did not close in utero. So in about a month or two, we will be going to Children's again, where she's going to get put under again, and she's going to get her cleft palate closed. So yesterday we were at Children's and we got x-rays done, and we had the specialist team look at her palate and see how it's doing. Now, on top of her getting her cleft palate closed, one thing that is a side, I don't want to say issue, but like it's very common with people with cleft palates and people with small jaw syndrome, which is what she has. There's a lot of fluid buildup in her ears. So in order to kind of like balance that effect out or use a defense against that, the doctors are going to also put tubes down her ears. Now, they just do that because kids with small jaw syndrome, babies with small jaw syndrome, babies with cleft palates, the wiring that's on the inside of their mouths, because it's a direct, I guess, flow from the ears to the mouth, that makes way for a lot of buildup, a lot of ear infections, and it's just something that they can combat. It's an easy fix. We went to the doctors probably around, I would say, maybe 2 months ago. We saw the ear, nose, and throat specialist, and there was a little bit of buildup in her left ear. They said it wasn't a lot, but because of the buildup and because of how common it is for the buildup to continue, they were like, since your daughter's already going under to get the cleft palate closed, why don't we just, while she's under, put tubes in her ear? So that's what they're going to do. They're going to put tubes in her ear and close her cleft palate. So because there's two different types of specialty doctors going on, there's the plastics team that's going to be closing her cleft palate, and then there's the ears, nose, and throat team that's going to be putting tubes down her ears. The specialty doctors kind of have to work and figure out who's available when, and how are we going to get both these specialties on the same day, and working with the anesthesiologist team, and all these people have to coordinate to get a day that they're available to be able to perform these surgeries for her. So yesterday we were just meeting with a bunch of her specialty doctors to try and make sure everything is squared away in terms of there's nothing else prep work that needs to be done before she goes in for surgery. More so, it's just we want to make sure we're on the right track. They looked at her ears again. They looked at her palate again. They just want to make sure nothing else has come up that they would feel the need to address while she was under. She looks really, really good, they said. And so we're just waiting for the teams of specialty doctors to get together, like I said, and coordinate a date. And then girlfriend will be going under to get her cleft palate closed and to get tubes in her ear. So we spent a couple hours at Children's yesterday taking care of business with that. So I don't know. I've been kind of sharing a little bit of my story on my various social media sites. And I kind of just find it really inspiring what the doctors at Children's have been able to do. The very first time I posted about my daughter and like what she had gone through since she was born last November, I got a lot of really positive feedback and positive comments. And I remember I posted the story on TikTok, just kind of, saying if there's a community out there of women with special needs, kids, which I know there are, but I had never heard of micronathia. I had never heard of small jaw syndrome. And unless like something super specifically rare has affected you personally or your family personally, I would venture to guess that most people don't really know about it, which is not shame to them or, I'm not at all blaming anybody. I didn't know about this. The only reason why I'm being forced to become aware about it is because it's affecting my child. But I put a post on TikTok about her with the distractors in her mouth and what she had gone through at Children's. And it was so sweet. I got so many positive comments back, sending prayers to my daughter and, hope that like she's able to grow through this, and prayers for my family and how strong of a baby she was and how much of a trooper she was, and how God has really blessed me, and I really, really have felt so blessed, truly dealing with this whole situation. It's opened my eyes up, because when I first went into my anatomy appointment, they told me that it was a possibility that she was going to be diagnosed with what was called trisomy 13 and trisomy 17, which I don't know if anybody knows about that. I didn't. Again, anything that's specifically rare, unless it had affected somebody in my life or, me personally, I didn't know anything about it. But trisomy 13 and or trisomy 17, basically those are just genetic disorders and genetic conditions that if our child were to have had them, and we were to continue the pregnancy through birth, the baby would not survive past a week after she was born. It's just a horrible genetic condition that the baby's going to have no quality of life. She was going to be in a lot of pain, and she would not have survived the week if she would have been diagnosed with this trisomy 13, trisomy 17. And so my fiance and I, we got genetically tested and we ran more tests, and she did not have it, thank the Lord. But we were also told that there were things about the baby that could not be known until she was born. So there was a possibility. And I remember the doctors and everybody telling us in the meeting with all the doctors that they don't ever promise a healthy pregnancy to anybody, because there are things that are happening in utero that they can't see, that a test can't show them, that a diagnosis can't show them. And so they said they never, ever, ever promise a healthy pregnancy. They don't care how great something looks. They don't care how much of the facts are coming back telling them a certain way. They just will not ever promise. And I completely, after after our experience going through what we went through, because we went through so many genetic testings to be able to see, is there something else that you could tell us to determine what could possibly be affecting our baby. And it was good for me too, because I'm adopted and I don't know anything. I mean, like, not a freaking thing about my biological parents. None. I don't know anything about my biological history. I don't know anything about anything. And I understand now how much of a deal that is, like, to really be informed. But this specific mutation, her small jaw syndrome, they said it affects like 1 in like every 8,000 babies, which honestly is a lot more, I want to say, common than I would have expected, especially like not having heard about it. And I would have expected it to be a lot more rare than that, but it just goes to show what you don't know. But back to me posting on like my social media page and posting on TikTok. This gentleman, I believe it's a male. I think he said, he didn't specify whether or not he was a male. I think it's a male, but I want to be able to, so like a small jaw or no jaw or micronathia, whatever you is best that you feel comfortable being calling this, like, it's basically what it is. It's like no jaw. Like, you know how I have length right here? It's basically like there's nothing under like this lip, or it's like very, very tiny. But this gentleman came into my comments when I posted on TikTok, and he was like, I believe it's a male. He said, I'm grateful that you and your baby were able to have this surgery. I was born 40 years ago where this treatment wasn't available. And he didn't have a picture or anything like that. I think he said, like, unfortunately, I was born 40 years ago when this type of modern medicine wasn't available. And it just broke my heart. It made me so sad, because you want your children to have the best shot at life. You really do. And just thinking about what wasn't available 40 years ago, and the fact that he had to grow up all through his formative years, all through his developmental years, and learn to live his life without this surgery. And it's hard, and I'm gonna get superficial here, because I believe that's just a reality of the world that we live in. I saw, obviously, what my child looked like with a very, very small jaw when she was born. Now, babies by default are cute, so they get away with things, and people are very tolerable of things when it's babies. They're a lot more accepting. They're a lot more they're just a lot more tolerable when it's a baby. Now, when that baby transitions and becomes a not baby or an older person, there's a lot less compassion. There's a lot less grace. There's a lot less empathy. There's a lot less forgiveness. There's a lot less all that stuff. And like I said, I'm getting ready to get, what's the word that I used? Superficial. The society that we live in is so aesthetic based, and like, I can only imagine what it must have been like 40 years ago, having been born with small jaw syndrome, not being able to have the modern medicine that we have today to correct it, and then to have to live your life aesthetically looking like that. And it's just, my heart broke for him, because by the grace of God, I was born during a time where modern medicine could perfect this surgery. And then when I gave birth, enough time has passed, 30 years, to where they could perfect this type of surgery. And now my daughter is able to reap the benefits of this type of surgery. And just like, I'm presuming this person was a man. But it very well could have been a woman who was talking to me and said that she was born with this 40 years ago. Unfortunately, the medicine didn't exist and the surgery didn't exist to fix it. And especially being a female, so much of like the world tells you your worth is based on how you look. And you know, when commodities are odd, and that doesn't even make sense. When commodities are odd, when rarities exist and something like small jaw syndrome exists, you don't really see that walking around in the world. And so when you do see it, it freaks you out and it scares you, especially on a grown adult. And so I just, like I said, as superficial as this world is, and for especially women, as much as they're told that their worth starts off at how they look, I'm so grateful that the surgery did exist and the surgery was allowed to be perfected, and that I was born in a time to where when I gave birth to my child, modern medicine had advanced to the point where my child could get this surgery, so that when she goes through her developmental years and she becomes an adult, or she's no longer a child, she's no longer this cute little baby that people make so many concessions for, as they should, but they don't offer that same grace to adults. And so it broke whoever was on the end of that post, and they said, you know, they're just letting me know that this type of surgery didn't exist 40 years ago. And they were basically telling me that they were stuck looking the way that they were looking, which, for lack of a better term, is a deformity. It really is. And there's no if, ands, or buts about it. And I'm just trying to be as real as I possibly can. It's a deformity. And back in the day when the bearded lady, when she had hair, that was a deformity. And people stared at her and mocked her and made fun of her. And that she did the best she could to embrace it and to go along with the mocking. But can you imagine all the names that she heard called her way because of this deformity? Nowadays, like, you know, facial hair is embraced for men and women. And yeah, it's just, I just, whoever was on the end of that comment, like, I hear you, I see you, and I'm so sorry that is the road that you had to take. But back to what I was talking about with her surgery. Her jaw has been lengthened and she's good, but her cleft palate still needs to be closed. And so we are going to wait for the update on that surgery. And as soon as I know, I will come on here and let you guys know, because that's what we're waiting on. That's the last of it, hopefully. That is the last of it. And then after that, we'll continue with her feeding. We'll continue to get her more and more comfortable with food not coming through a tube. And it'll be great. She will continue to thrive and get bigger. She's almost 20 pounds. Which is just like, she was so little, and like being fed through a feeding tube anyway, like you're not getting the nutrients and stuff. You are getting the nutrients, but like you're being fed through a feeding tube, and it's just like, your baby's fed, yes, but the availability to be able to just, like grab a bottle and mix it with oatmeal, or mix it with, you know, different types of food and stuff. You have to be very careful with, you know, the tubes and stuff so it doesn't get stuck. And you know, more than anything, you want her to be able to do that stuff by mouth. And you don't want her to continue to get so used to the feeding tube that she doesn't want anything else by mouth. So it's just, you know, we're just doing the best we can. And she's been such a trooper. She really has. She has been through so much in such a short time on earth. And so, like I said, I will keep you guys updated. When I know, you guys will know. And I just ask that you keep, you know, my family in prayers. And yeah, we're on our way. We're on the road to cleft palate surgery. So thank you. So guys, thank you so much for just listening to me rant, listening to me talk about my family and my life. And thank you. So I will see you guys on Thursday. All right, bye.